The Galactic Council chamber hung in the void like a jewel made of starlight and ambition. 12,000 beings from across 3 galaxies filled the crystalline tiers that spiraled upward into darkness. Their forms varied beyond imagination. Some breathed methane, others pure radiation. Some existed as energy fields barely contained by geometric patterns. Others were silicon-based giants that moved once per standard hour. But today, every eye, sensor, and perception organ focused on the transparent platform at the chamber's center, Ambassador. Marcus Webb stood alone in the defendant sphere, a circle of light suspended above an endless drop. His gray hair caught the strange illumination that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. His posture was relaxed, almost casual, as if he stood in his own office rather than before the most powerful governing body in known space. This calmness disturbed many who watched. Humans were new to the galactic stage, barely 2 centuries since their first faster-than-light voyage. They should be terrified. The Supreme Arbiter materialized above the assembly. It had no fixed form. Existing as pure thought given temporary substance through technology beyond most species' understanding, its voice resonated in every language simultaneously, a feat that still made some species uneasy. Ambassador Webb of Earth, the Arbiter began. You stand accused of the gravest crime recognized by this council, the complete extinction of the Valkyrie Dominion, a civilization that ruled 300 systems for 10,000 years. How do you answer? Holographic displays erupted around Webb, each showing scenes of devastation. Valkyrie worlds reduced to debris fields, proud fleets scattered like toys. Cities that had stood for millennia turned to ash and memory. The evidence seemed overwhelming and damning. Webb looked at each display with the same calm expression. When he finally spoke, his voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. Before I answer, I have a question for the council. A ripple of shock ran through the assembly. Defendants did not ask questions. They begged for mercy or proclaimed innocence. They did not challenge the council itself. The Arbiter's patterns flickered in what might have been surprise. You are not in a position to make demands, Ambassador. It is not a demand, Webb replied. It is necessary context. Would the council like to know what the Valkyrie did to provoke this response? Or would you prefer to continue assuming we acted without cause? The chamber fell silent. In the gallery, representatives from 100 civilizations shifted uncomfortably. They remembered the warnings, dismissed at the time as human arrogance. Do not make the same mistake the Valkyrie made. Now they wondered what that mistake had been. The Arbiter considered. Finally, it spoke. Very well. The council will hear your account from the beginning. Webb nodded. Then we must go back 3 standard years. The scene dissolved, replaced by new holographic projections. The council chamber during a routine session, a younger, equally calm Marcus Webb presenting a simple proposal. Human colonies wished to expand into the Outer Veil Territory's neutral space, unclaimed by any major civilization. Standard procedure. Uncontroversial. Then a massive crystalline figure rose from the Valkyrie delegation. High Commander Thane stood 3 meters tall, his exoskeleton gleaming like cut diamond, harder than most starship armor. His species had perfected neural enhancements over millennia, making them faster, stronger, and more dangerous than almost any other race. They had built an empire through conquest and maintained it through fear. Objection. Thane's voice rumbled through the chamber. Humanity has no right to these territories. They are soft creatures who stumbled into space through luck rather than merit. They lack the strength to hold territory beyond their own star system. Webb had stood calmly then too, watching Thane with the same unreadable expression. The Valkyrie commander invoked an ancient right, one written into the council's founding documents. A formal challenge. One species could contest another's petition through trials of strength, intelligence, and will. If humanity lost, they would abandon all colonies beyond their home system and submit to Valkyrie. It's oversight. The council had been bound by its own laws. The challenge was allowed. Most representatives expected humanity to withdraw the petition rather than face certain defeat. The Valkyrie were warriors. Humans were explorers and thinkers, not fighters. Webb's response shocked everyone. We accept. No hesitation. No consultation with Earth. No request for time to consider. Immediate acceptance. Several council members noticed this, filed it away as curious. Why would a cautious species accept such dangerous terms so quickly? The first trial was military strength. The Velkhari brought their finest battle fleet to a neutral proving ground. 50 warships commanded by veterans of 100 conflicts. Humanity sent one vessel. The USS Prometheus, commanded by Captain Alicia Grant, looked small and unremarkable by galactic standards. Its weapons appeared conventional. Its armor seemed adequate, but not exceptional. The Velkhari fleet attacked with overwhelming force. Following tactics that had crushed opponents for thousands of years, energy weapons filled space with deadly light. Missiles tracked and hunted. The Prometheus should have been destroyed in seconds. Instead, it vanished. Not cloaked behind shields or stealth fields, it simply ceased to exist in normal space. Velkhari sensors screamed contradictions. Their targeting systems found nothing. Their commanders shouted orders at ships that could not respond to a threat they could not detect. The Prometheus reappeared inside the Velkhari formation. Among the clustered warships, what happened next lasted 17 seconds. Every Velkhari ship lost power simultaneously. Weapons went offline. Propulsion failed. Life support remained active, keeping crews alive in darkened vessels, but everything else stopped functioning. The crews sat in shock, wondering what weapon could do this. When Thane demanded an explanation, Webb's answer was simple. We did not use a weapon. We used physics you have not discovered yet. The council chamber erupted in debate. The Velkhari delegation screamed about trickery and deception. Other species demanded technical details. Webb refused to elaborate. The trial's rules did not require him to explain humanity's methods. It's only to demonstrate their capability. Thane, enraged and humiliated, made a fatal error. He demanded all 3 trials occur within 1 solar cycle instead of the traditional 3 years. He believed humanity had revealed their only advantage too early, that they had won through luck. Give them no time to prepare. They would fail the remaining tests. Webb agreed without hesitation. Again, the same disturbing calm. The same immediate acceptance. As the session ended, a junior council member approached Webb privately. Pax, a methane-breathing scholar from the Drift Collective, had watched the entire proceeding with growing unease. Ambassador, why are you doing this? You could have negotiated. The Velkhari would have backed down eventually. This challenge puts your entire species at risk. Webb looked at the alien scholar with eyes that seemed older than his years. We do not want them to back down. We want them to commit fully. We want the entire galaxy to watch what comes next. The answer sent ice through Pax's metabolic system. This was not the response of someone forced into a corner. This was the response of someone executing a plan. The second trial was announced. A contest of intelligence and strategy. The Velkhari would bring General Karn, undefeated in 3,000 simulated and actual conflicts. A tactical genius whose strategies were studied across 50 civilizations, humanity's representative remained unnamed. The galaxy watched and waited, wondering if the first victory had truly been skill or simply an impossible anomaly that could never be repeated. The tension built as species placed bets, made alliances, and prepared for whatever would come next. No one knew that what came next would change everything they thought they understood about power, mercy, and the true nature of humanity. The simulation chamber materialized from quantum foam. A sphere 5 kilometers in diameter, where reality itself could be rewritten, according to programmed parameters. Billions across the galaxy watched through quantum broadcast as General Karn entered from one side. His crystalline form reflected the chamber's strange light. His reputation preceded him like a weapon. 3,000 victories. 0 defeats. His tactical treatises were required reading in military academies from the core worlds to the outer rim, from the opposite entrance. A single human walked forward. David Torres wore simple civilian clothing. No military uniform, no ceremonial armor. He was a university professor of game theory, not a soldier. He had never commanded troops in actual combat. The Velkari delegation erupted in laughter and outrage. Thane's voice boomed across the chamber. "This is an insult. They send a teacher to face our greatest strategic mind." Webb sat in the observergallery.com, as always. "The rules state each species chooses their own champion. We have chosen Professor Torres." The arbiter confirmed the selection was legal. The trial would proceed. Karn and Torres took their positions at opposite control stations. The simulation parameters loaded. Both commanders received identical resources, identical starting positions, identical objectives. Victory required controlling 60% of the simulated territory for 1 standard hour. Time compression would make the entire scenario play out over 6 hours of real time, representing months of campaign warfare. The simulation began. Aaron deployed his forces with masterful precision. He divided his fleet into 3 groups, each supporting the others while advancing on separate fronts. His supply lines were protected. His flanks were secure. His troops moved with the coordination of a perfectly tuned instrument. Within 2 simulated weeks, he had captured 15% of the territory. Torres did something strange. He split his forces into dozens of small groups and sent them in different directions with no apparent coordination. His supply lines stretched dangerously thin. His defenses looked weak. Military observers across the galaxy shook their heads. This was amateur work. Torres was losing badly by the 2-hour mark in real time. Representing months of simulated warfare, Karn controlled 40% of the territory. Torres held barely 20%, and his forces were in full retreat. The Velkari celebrated. Thane stood and proclaimed victory was inevitable. Even some human observers looked worried. Only Webb maintained his expression of absolute calm. Then Torres did something unexpected. He surrendered his military forces entirely. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon system received orders to stand down. Karn's forces swept in and captured them without firing a shot. The territory count shifted to 75% Velkari, 25% human. By the trial's rules, Karn had won, except Torres was not done. With his military eliminated, he redirected all his remaining resources into economic development and diplomatic outreach. His remaining territories began trading with neutral factions in the simulation. Cultural exchange programs started. Strategic resource allocation created dependencies. Karn's conquered territories, which had expected military occupation, instead received trade agreements and infrastructure development from Torres's remaining holdings. Within 3 simulation months, something remarkable happened. The territories Karn had conquered began requesting to switch allegiance, not through military rebellion, but through political pressure. Their populations wanted the economic benefits Torres offered. Their governments faced internal dissent. Karn's military victories became Pyrrhic. He controlled hostile populations that drained his resources faster than he could replace them. Torres's territories, meanwhile, thrived. Production increased. Population satisfaction soared. And slowly, methodically, the territory count began to shift. 45% Velkari, 45% human. 50% Velkari, 50% human. At the 5-hour mark, Torres held 62% of the territory, not through conquest, but through conversion. Karn's forces remained undefeated militarily, but they controlled nothing of value. The simulation ended. Torres had won. The council chamber sat in stunned silence. Karn, who had never lost, stared at his control station in disbelief. Thane rose, his crystalline body shaking with rage. This is not warfare. This is cheating. He ignored the military objectives entirely. Torres spoke for the first time, his voice gentle but clear. The victory conditions said nothing about military conquest being required. War is the continuation of politics by other means. You focused on the continuation. I focused on the politics. The arbiter confirmed the victory was legitimate. The rules had been followed. Humanity had won the second trial. The galaxy erupted in debate. Some praised Torres's creativity. Others argued the trial had been corrupted, but all agreed on one thing. Humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had suspected. Thane, humiliated twice before the entire galaxy, made a decision that would doom his species. He invoked the oldest, rarest, and most dangerous form of challenge: trial by combat. Single champion from each species. Physical confrontation. To the death. The stakes would be absolute. If the Valkyrie won, humanity would submit to complete subjugation. Their homeworld would become a Valkyrie colony. If humanity won, the challenge would end in their favor. The Council tried to intervene. This was too extreme. The old laws allowed it, yes, but they were written in a different age. Surely negotiation was possible. Thane refused to back down. His pride would not allow it. And Webb predictably accepted immediately. Webb named humanity's champion Lieutenant Rebecca Howell, a Special Forces operator. She entered the chamber to gasps and shocked murmurs. She stood 1.6 meters tall. Her weight was perhaps 60 kilograms. She looked young, barely 30 Earth years. She wore simple training clothes and walked with quiet confidence. The Valkyrie champion was Thane himself. 3 meters of crystalline armor and enhanced muscle. He had killed opponents from 20 different species in sanctioned combat. His neural enhancements gave him reflexes that could track and counter attacks faster than most species could perceive. His exoskeleton could withstand direct hits from energy weapons. The match seemed like suicide. The galaxy watched in horror. Species that had grown fond of humanity through trade and cultural exchange mourned their impending subjugation. Earth would fall. Humanity would become slaves to the Valkyrie dominion. All because of pride and a challenge that should never have been accepted. But Pax, the methane-breathing scholar, noticed something others missed. He spent 3 days reviewing every interaction between humans and the Council. He studied their body language, their response times, their word choices, and he found disturbing patterns. Every human who appeared before the Council displayed the same unnatural calm. Every decision was made without hesitation, as if following a predetermined script. And the data transmissions from Earth showed massive encrypted packets, sent throughout human space after each trial. Pax requested an emergency private audience with the Arbiter. He presented his evidence in a sealed chamber where no other species could hear. The patterns, the encrypted transmissions, the coordinated behavior. The Arbiter studied the data. "What do you believe this means?" Pax's answer came slowly, as if speaking the words made them real. "I believe we are not watching a challenge. I believe we are watching an execution. And humanity is deciding whether to make it an example or simply eliminate the threat quietly. Everything they have done has been deliberate. The acceptance, the champions they chose, the way they won. They are not reacting to the Valkyrie. They are controlling this entire situation." The Arbiter's patterns flickered in concern. If that is true, then the combat trial is not about determining a winner. It is about sending a message, Pax said, and I fear the message will be written in Valkyrie blood. The question is whether it ends with Thane or extends to his entire civilization. I think humanity is waiting to see how far the Valkyrie will push before they respond with full force. The Arbiter had no response. The trial would proceed. The combat was scheduled, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen when a Death World species decided to stop holding back. The combat arena materialized in open space. A transparent sphere suspended between stars and witnessed by fleets from 100 civilizations. Every species with the technology to observe had ships in attendance. The quantum broadcasts reached billions of beings across 3 galaxies. This was history unfolding. Either humanity would fall and become a cautionary tale, or something unprecedented would occur. Rebecca Howell entered the arena wearing lightweight training clothes. No armor, no visible weapons, no enhancements that observers could detect. She moved with fluid grace, stretching her shoulders and neck as if preparing for a routine exercise session. Her face showed no fear, no anger, no emotion, except mild concentration. Thane entered from the opposite side. His crystalline exoskeleton had been polished to mirror brightness. Neural enhancement ports glowed along his spine. Muscle fibers enhanced with biomechanical augmentation rippled beneath translucent armor. He radiated power and violence. He had requested this trial specifically because he wanted to personally crush a human champion. To demonstrate Valkyrie's superiority in the most primal way possible, the Arbiter's voice resonated through the arena. The trial will proceed under standard combat rules. No weapons. No outside interference. Victory by submission, incapacitation, or death. Combatants acknowledged. Acknowledged, Howell said quietly. Acknowledged, Thane rumbled, his voice full of anticipated violence. Begin. Thane moved first. His enhanced reflexes launched him forward at speeds that should have been impossible for something his size. Neural accelerators turned his perception into slow motion, allowing him to process and react to threats faster than most species could blink. He closed the distance to Howell in less than a second, his massive fist drawing back for a strike that would shatter bones and rupture organs. Howell dodged, barely, just enough. Thane's fist passed centimeters from her head, the displacement of air ruffling her hair. The galaxy watching through sensors and screens gasped. This would be over in seconds. No one could dodge a Valkyrie warrior for long. Thane spun with impossible speed, his other hand sweeping in a backhand that should have been unavoidable. Howell ducked under it, stepped inside his reach, and did something that made 12,000 council observers fall silent. She caught his arm. Her small human hands, soft and fragile compared to crystalline armor, wrapped around Thane's wrist and stopped his strike completely. The arena went absolutely silent. A human had stopped a Valkyrie warrior's attack with her bare hands. This should not be possible. Valkyrie's strength was legendary. Their enhancements multiplied their natural power tenfold. How? LL stood 1.6 meters tall and weighed 60 kilograms. Basic physics said she should have been swept aside like a leaf in a storm. Howell's expression did not change. She twisted, applying leverage and torque in a motion too fast for most observers to follow. The sound came next. A sharp crack that resonated through the arena's acoustic sensors. Thane's arm, protected by crystalline exoskeleton, harder than starship hull plating, fractured. The break ran from his wrist to his elbow, spiderweb pattern spreading through material that should have been unbreakable. Thane staggered backward, his neural enhancements screaming damage warnings. Pain suppressors that should have kept him functional flooded his system with feedback. His mind could not process what had happened. Humans were weak. Their bones broke easily. Their muscles tore under stress. They were fragile creatures. How had she done this? Howell advanced, not running, not attacking aggressively. She walked forward with the calm determination of someone performing a necessary but tedious task. Thane, operating on instinct and training, launched a kick with his good arm, supporting his balance. The strike should have caved in her ribcage. Howell caught his leg mid-strike. She held it, muscles that should not have existed in her frame bearing the force without visible strain. Then she struck once, precisely at Thane's thorax. The impact sounded like a hammer hitting stone. Thane flew backward, crashing through the arena's inner wall into the force field that contained the combat space. He hit the energy barrier and slid down, leaving a trail of crystalline fragments. The Valkyrie delegation erupted in chaos. This was impossible. Their sensors must be malfunctioning. Their champion, undefeated, had been thrown like a child's toy. Thane struggled to rise, his enhanced healing already working on the fractures. But his movements were slow, pained, uncertain. Marcus Webb stood in the observer gallery. His calm finally broke, replaced by something harder. He activated his communication link to address the entire council. Perhaps we should explain what humanity actually is. The holographic displays shifted. Images of Earth appeared. Not the peaceful blue world often shown in diplomatic materials, but Earth as it truly existed. A planet where gravity crushed visitors from most species. An atmosphere so corrosive with oxygen that entire civilizations had to use protective suits to survive there. oceans that were pressure chambers, weather systems that spawned storms capable of destroying cities, a biosphere where everything was constantly trying to kill everything else. Webb's voice narrated the images. Earth is what we call a death world. The classification does not exist in your databases because no species from such a world has ever reached space before. Every aspect of our planet is hostile to life. Our gravity is twice the galactic standard. Our atmosphere burns with oxygen. Our weather is catastrophically violent. Our biology evolved not as apex predators, but as endurance hunters on a planet that tried to eliminate us every single day. The displays showed human evolution. Ancestors running prey to exhaustion across burning plains. Bodies designed to shed heat and maintain pursuit for hours. Skeletal structures built to withstand impact and stress. Muscular systems over-engineered for an environment that demanded constant peak performance. Humans are not weak, Webb continued. We are operating in an environment designed for fragile species. In your gravity, your atmosphere, your temperature ranges, we use a fraction of our physical capability. Rebecca Howell is above average for a human, but she is not exceptional. On Earth, in Earth gravity, she would be strong, but not remarkable. Here, she is barely exerting herself. The galaxy watched Howell stand over Thane. She was not breathing hard. Her pulse was elevated, but controlled. She had thrown a 3-meter warrior through a wall and looked like she had done light exercise. But Webb was not finished. The physical advantage is not the important part. What makes humanity dangerous is not our strength. It is our organization, our ability to coordinate, to plan, to execute strategies involving millions of individuals across vast distances. Every human you have seen in this challenge has been playing a role, following a plan developed by our entire species. We accepted this challenge knowing exactly how it would proceed because we had already wargamed every possible scenario. The displays showed Earth's command centers, millions of humans working in coordinated effort, simulations running continuously, strategies being refined and distributed. The encrypted transmissions Pax had discovered were humanity's entire civilization working as a single organism. Webb looked directly at Thane, still struggling to stand. But none of that is why you lost. You lost because you made assumptions. You assumed we were weak because we avoided conflict. You assumed our colonies were vulnerable because we did not defend them aggressively. And most importantly, you assumed we would not notice when you started raiding our ships. The chamber went silent. This was new information. Webb continued, his voice cold now, the calm replaced by controlled anger. For 3 years, the Velkari Dominion has been attacking human colony vessels. You disguised the raids as pirate activity. You took our people as slaves. You experimented on them to understand our biology. You stole our resources. We brought evidence to the council. You dismissed it as unsubstantiated. So we stopped bringing evidence, and we started preparing. New displays showed the proof. Recovered ships with Valkyrie signatures in the damage patterns. Survivors with memories of Valkyrie captors. Genetic evidence from holding facilities. 217 humans had died in Valkyrie experiments, their bodies dissected to understand Death World physiology. We waited, Webb said, for you to make a legal mistake. We needed you to attack us in a way the Council could not ignore. And you did. You issued a challenge. You gave us the legal framework to respond. So we accepted immediately, because we had been waiting for this opportunity. Hal stepped back from Thane, who finally managed to stand. She received a signal through her communication link and nodded. Webb addressed Thane directly. You have 24 standard hours to return every human you have taken. Every single one. And to provide full reparations for the deaths your experiments caused. If you comply, the challenge ends here. You will face council justice for your illegal actions, and we will return to our respective territories. This is mercy. This is the peaceful resolution. The galaxy waited for Thane's response. He stood in the arena, broken and humiliated, faced with a choice: surrender and face justice, or escalate. For a long moment, he seemed to consider. Then his communication system activated. A transmission from the Valkari homeworld, from the Dominion's High Council. Their message was clear and public, broadcast so the entire galaxy could hear. The Velkhari Dominion rejected the ultimatum. They would not be dictated to by weaklings. They would not surrender because one warrior had fallen to tricks and deception. They declared war on humanity. Total war. They would mobilize every ship, every soldier, every weapon in their 300 systems. They would crush Earth and enslave its population. This was the Velkhari response to mercy. Webb's expression did not change. He had expected this. Perhaps hoped for it. He sent a single encrypted transmission to Earth. It contained one word: execute, across human space. In systems the Council had never detected, fleets powered up. Ships equipped with phase shift technology that made them invisible to conventional sensors began to move. The vessels that had disappeared from tracking during the first trial had been multiplying, building in secret. Preparing for this exact moment, the galaxy was about to learn what happened when a death world species decided mercy had been rejected and war was the only remaining option. The Velkhari had demanded total war. Humanity would give them exactly what they asked for, and in the process, demonstrate why some species should never be challenged. The Velkhari Dominion mobilized with terrifying efficiency. 300 systems, coordinated through quantum communication networks built over 10 millennia, began the largest military deployment in modern galactic history. Thousands of warships emerged from orbital shipyards. Millions of soldiers activated from reserve status. Weapons platforms that had defended against ancient threats powered up for the first time in centuries. The Dominion had never lost a war. They did not intend to start now. Their invasion force assembled at the edge of human space. 7 fleet groups, each commanded by a veteran of multiple campaigns, prepared to strike at humanity's 12 colony systems simultaneously. The strategy was simple and brutal. Overwhelm every human settlement at once. Force Earth to choose which colonies to save. Watch humanity fracture under impossible decisions. Then, while they scrambled to defend scattered territories, drive straight to Earth itself and end the war in one decisive blow. The fleets advanced. Their sensors swept space ahead of them, searching for human defensive positions. They found nothing unusual. Standard patrol routes. Civilian traffic following predictable patterns. Colonies going about normal business. Either humanity was unaware of the coming assault, or they were in denial about their impending defeat. The Velkhari fleets reached the first colony system. Their sensors showed settlements on 3 planets and 2 large space stations. Population readings indicated 2 million humans. Easy targets. The fleet commander ordered attack formations. Ships moved into position. Weapons charged. And then, something strange happened. The humans were gone. Not destroyed. Not hiding. Gone. Every settlement stood empty. Buildings intact. Infrastructure functioning. Power grids active, but not a single human remained. The colonies had been evacuated so completely that meals still sat on tables, half-eaten. The Velkhari forces landed, searching for some trick or trap. They found nothing except empty cities waiting in silence. This pattern repeated across all 12 colony systems. Humanity had abandoned everything they had built and vanished. The Velkhari claimed the systems without firing a shot. Thane, commanding from the flagship, declared victory. Humanity had fled like cowards rather than face Velkhari might. The Dominion now controlled all human territory except Earth itself. The war was effectively over. Then the counterattack began. But it did not come where anyone expected. Human ships materialized in the heart of Velkhari space, peering from phase shift in systems that should have been unreachable without detection. But they did not attack planets or fleets. Instead, they targeted something the Velkhari had never thought to defend extensively: infrastructure, communication relays, quantum network nodes. The systems that allowed 300 systems to coordinate as one empire within 6 hours. Every major FTL communication relay in the Dominion went dark. The quantum network that had connected their civilization for thousands of years collapsed. 300 systems found themselves isolated, unable to communicate beyond their local space. Commanders who had been receiving orders from Central Command suddenly heard only silence. The Valkyrie Empire fractured into 300 independent pieces, each forced to make decisions alone. Human ships began broadcasting on every available channel in every Valkyrie dialect. The message was simple: surrender now. Abandon your allegiance to the Dominion. You will be spared. Any system that continues to resist will face consequences. Join humanity peacefully, and we will help you rebuild. Fight us, and you will understand why Earth is called a death world. Most Valkyrie systems refused. Pride would not allow surrender to a species they had dismissed as weak. They were warriors. They had never yielded in their history. A few scattered systems, mostly outlying colonies, with small populations, accepted the offer. But the core of the Dominion, the ancient heartland systems, prepared for battle. Humanity selected one system for a demonstration: Carthax, a major industrial world with a population of 4 billion Valkyrie. It was important enough to matter, but not so crucial that its loss would cripple the Dominion. Perfect for showing what humanity could do. Human ships surrounded Carthax. The local defense fleet prepared to fight. They expected orbital bombardment, planetary invasion, the traditional methods of warfare. Instead, the humans deployed thousands of small satellites into orbital paths. The satellites activated simultaneously, and Carthax's entire technological infrastructure failed. Every power grid on the planet went dark. Every satellite in orbit fell from the sky, their systems corrupted beyond recovery. Every computer, from personal devices to planetary defense networks, crashed completely. The electromagnetic pulse weapons humanity deployed did not harm any living being, but they sent Carthax's civilization back to pre-industrial technology levels in minutes. The human broadcast repeated, "This is what mercy looks like. We have not killed anyone. We have not destroyed your cities. We have simply removed your ability to wage war. You can rebuild. You can recover. But it will take decades. The next system that resists will not receive mercy. The next system will see what we do when we stop being gentle." The Valkyrie High Council watched from their homeworld. They had lost contact with most of their empire, but enough reports filtered through to understand the scope of the disaster. Their response was fury. They would not be intimidated by threats. They ordered all available forces to concentrate. If humanity wanted war, Dominion would end it decisively. Every Valkyrie warship that could still receive orders began moving toward a single rally point. The fleet that assembled was beyond massive. 7,000 ships, the largest military force ever gathered in recorded history. Enough firepower to reduce planets to asteroids, enough troops to conquer entire sectors. This armada would strike at Earth itself and force humanity's unconditional surrender. The Council tried desperately to intervene. Emergency transmissions went out through whatever communication. Channels still functioned. Stop. Negotiate. This escalation would lead to catastrophe. But the messages reached isolated systems, too slowly or not at all. The Valkyrie Armada was already in motion. They arrived at the solar system expecting a desperate last stand. Human defenders gathering around their homeworld. Fleets positioned to protect Earth at any cost. Instead, they found something impossible. Humanity was not defending. They were waiting. Thousands of platforms drifted throughout the solar system. They had been there all along, disguised as asteroids, defunct satellites, abandoned stations, camouflaged so perfectly that Valkyrie scouts had passed them dozens of times without noticing. Now, they activated. Each platform generated a gravitational field. Individually, the fields were negligible, barely measurable. Together, they created something the galaxy had never witnessed. Artificial gravity wells that could be shaped, directed, and weaponized. The Valkyrie fleet found itself caught in gravitational forces that tore formations apart. Ships that tried to maneuver found their navigation systems useless. Gravity pulled from impossible directions. Changing moment to moment, While the fleet struggled against forces they could not fight, human ships phased in and out of normal space. They struck with precision that spoke of absolute confidence. Weapons fire disabled specific systems: life support, propulsion, command centers. Every shot calculated to cripple without destroying. Within 3 hours, the Valkyrie armada drifted helpless. 7,000 ships reduced to floating debris with living crews trapped inside. The human broadcast came one final time. You have 12 standard hours to surrender unconditionally. Return all human prisoners. Acknowledge responsibility for your illegal raids. Submit to council arbitration, or face the consequences of continued resistance. The Valkyrie High Council convened an emergency session. Their empire was shattered. Their fleet was disabled. Their pride was in ruins, and they faced a choice: surrender or die. For 10 hours they debated. Cultural traditions going back thousands of years warred with survival instinct. Finally, they reached a decision. They would not surrender. They would never surrender. They were Valkyrie, warriors. If they could not win, they would fight until the last of their kind fell. They activated a doomsday protocol, built in an age of paranoia and never used. Automated weapons platforms across their empire received the same order. If the Dominion falls, take everything with it. Destroy every Valkyrie colony. Kill every Valkyrie citizen. Leave nothing for the enemy to conquer. Marcus Webb received reports of the doomsday activation. He had 12 minutes to decide. Let the Valkyrie destroy themselves, and potentially billions of innocents in the blast radius of their weapons, or act. 12 minutes to choose between allowing a civilization to commit suicide, or taking action that would change humanity's relationship with the galaxy forever. He chose to act. The order went out. Protocol Omega. Human ships across Valkyrie space received their commands. The phase shift drives activated, but not for movement. They began emitting a harmonic frequency, carefully calculated and precisely targeted. The frequency resonated with Valkyrie neural enhancements, the same technology that made them fearsome warriors. Within seconds, every Valkyrie in their empire experienced cascading systems failures. Neural accelerators caused feedback loops instead of enhancing reflexes. Pain suppressors failed, flooding their minds with every injury. Cognitive enhancers became sources of confusion and disorientation. The technology they had perfected over millennia turned against them, and in that moment of complete helplessness, human ships moved. Not to destroy, but to save. Billions of Valkyrie, incapacitated by their own augmentations, were transported to safety as their doomsday weapons activated. Colony after colony evacuated in minutes using technology that could move matter across space. The weapons fired on empty worlds, destroying infrastructure but killing no one. The galaxy watched in shock as humanity saved the species that had tried to annihilate them. And in the council chambers, the Arbiter realized the terrible truth. Humanity had turned the Valkyrie's greatest strength into their ultimate weakness and used that power not for revenge, but for rescue. The trial resumed in the present, the long explanation complete. Marcus Webb stood in the defendant's sphere, having shown the council everything: the evidence of Valkyrie raids, the rejection of mercy, the doomsday protocol, the evacuation. The Arbiter's geometric patterns pulsed with processing power beyond most species' understanding as it reviewed the data. The charges state total extinction, the Arbiter said slowly. Yet you claim you saved them. Explain this contradiction. Webb took a breath. This was the difficult part. We saved their lives. We could not save their civilization. The two are not the same. The holographic display shifted to show the aftermath. Billions of Valkyrie civilians transported to safe locations across the galaxy. Their military neutralized completely. Their government dissolved. Their empire dismantled. Every weapon destroyed. Every warship reduced to scrap. The infrastructure of conquest and war removed entirely. We gave them a choice, Webb continued. Live in peace, under council supervision, or rebuild on your own terms in designated systems far from other civilizations. Most chose the latter. We established a quarantine world where those who wanted isolation could go. The Arbiter waited. There was more to this story. The charges claimed extinction, and Webb had not yet explained why. The problem, Webb said quietly, is that we failed to understand Valkyrie psychology. Their entire culture was built on being warriors. Every aspect of their identity, from childhood education to elderly ceremonies, revolved around strength through conflict. They were not just a species with a military. They were a species whose purpose was military dominance. Pax, watching from the gallery, understood before the Arbiter spoke. Being saved by the species they attacked, being beaten so thoroughly they could not even successfully destroy themselves. This was psychologically impossible for them to accept. Webb nodded. Within 6 months of their defeat, 98% of the Valkyrie population chose voluntary euthanasia. Not because we forced them, not because we imprisoned or punished them, but because they could not exist in a universe where they were not the strongest. Their cultural identity was so inflexible, so completely tied to dominance, that absolute defeat meant absolute meaninglessness. Out. The council chamber filled with shocked silence. An entire civilization had chosen death over adaptation. The displays showed the records. Millions, then billions of Valkyrie simply choosing to stop living. Medical facilities overwhelmed with beings who had no physical injuries but who refused to continue existing. Tried to stop it, Webb said, and for the first time emotion cracked through his calm. We offered therapy, cultural exchange, new purposes. We begged them to find meaning beyond warfare. Some listened. 2%. They went to the quarantine world and began the difficult work of rebuilding their culture from scratch. But the rest could not make that leap. We saved them from physical destruction, only to watch them choose spiritual destruction. The Arbiter considered this. So the Valkyrie dominion is extinct. But the Valkyrie species continues in limited numbers. Yes, Webb confirmed. Approximately 80 million individuals on one protected world, hidden from council records at their request. They are starting over, creating something new. We monitor them, protect them from external threats, and wait to see what they become. The charges were clear. Humanity had destroyed the Valkyrie dominion. But had they committed genocide? The council debated for 3 standard days. Representatives from 12,000 civilizations discussed philosophy, law, ethics, and precedent. Some argued that destroying a culture was genocide, regardless of how many individuals survived. Others claimed humanity had shown remarkable restraint and that the Valkyrie's choice was their own. The vote came on the 4th day. The Arbiter announced the verdict. Humanity is found guilty of excessive force, but not genocide. You dismantled an entire civilization. But you did so in response to documented attacks, and after offering multiple opportunities for peaceful resolution. You saved billions of lives, even when those lives belonged to your enemies. However, the Council cannot ignore that your actions resulted in cultural destruction on a scale rarely seen. The sentence was measured. Humanity would accept Council oversight of military expansion for 100 standard years. They would submit quarterly reports on fleet movements and weapons development. They would participate in mandatory diplomatic training. But they would not face sanctions, reparations, or restrictions on civilian expansion. Webb accepted without argument. As he left the defendant's sphere, the Arbiter stopped him with a final question. Was it worth it, Ambassador? The reputation you have earned. The fear you have instilled. Webb turned back. His answer would be replayed across the galaxy for generations. We did not want fear. We wanted respect. We wanted other species to understand that humanity will protect its own at any cost. But we also wanted them to see that we show mercy when we can. We saved the Valkyrie, even as they tried to destroy themselves. Every species in this council now knows both what we can do and what we choose not to do. That combination is more powerful than fear alone. He paused at the chamber exit. You asked what became of the last species that challenged humanity. The answer is transformation. They ceased to exist as they were and became something new. Whether that is better or worse than death, I leave to philosophers. But I will tell you this with certainty. No species will make the Valkyrie's mistake again. And that was always the point. Months passed. The galaxy adjusted to its new understanding of humanity. Trade agreements were renegotiated with more favorable terms. Territorial disputes that had dragged on for years suddenly found peaceful resolutions. No one wanted to be the next Valkyrie. Pax requested permission to visit the quarantine world. The council granted it, and Webb provided coordinates. The methane-breathing scholar traveled to a small planet in an isolated system, protected by human ships that remained carefully distant. He met with one of the surviving Valkyrie, a former warrior named Vex, who now taught children in a settlement that looked nothing like the grand cities of the Old Dominion. "Do you regret it?" Pax asked. "The challenge, the war, everything your people lost." Considered the question carefully. His crystalline body had been modified, the neural enhancements removed. He moved more slowly now, thought more deliberately, but seemed more at peace. "We regret our arrogance. We assumed strength meant military dominance. Humanity taught us that true strength is choosing mercy when you have the power to destroy. They saved us from ourselves. That is a greater warrior feat than any conquest. We are building a new culture now, based on that lesson." He gestured to the settlement, where young Valkyrie played games that involved cooperation rather than competition, learned skills that built rather than destroyed. The old Valkyrie are extinct. We are something new, and we owe our existence to the species we tried to annihilate. That truth is the foundation of everything we teach here. Ax returned to the council and filed his report. Attached to the official documentation was a personal note that spread through diplomatic channels. The note contained one observation that summarized everything that had happened. Humanity did not destroy the Valkyrie through superior weapons or overwhelming force. They destroyed them by being so thoroughly, undeniably superior, that the Valkyrie could not maintain the lie they had built their civilization on. The greatest weapon is not one that kills the body, but one that makes continuing the fight psychologically impossible. Back on Earth, Marcus Webb read the report in his office. His assistant asked if he would respond to Pox's note. Webb shook his head. "Not yet. Let the galaxy process what happened. Let them understand that we tried every option before resorting to force. In a generation, when memories have faded and new species join the council, we will see if the lesson holds." He looked out at Earth from his window, the planet that had forged humanity in constant struggle. The world that made them strong, adaptable, and capable of both incredible violence and remarkable mercy. The death world that had given birth to a species the galaxy would never again underestimate. A transmission arrived from the Valkyrie settlement. It was simple, without ceremony. A message of gratitude for protection and support. A request to be left alone to finish their cultural rebuilding. And a promise that when they were ready, they would rejoin galactic civilization as something better than they had been. Webb archived the message without responding. Someday, perhaps humanity and the new Valkyrie culture would meet as equals and allies rather than conqueror and conquered. But that day was years away. For now, the galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity had demonstrated what happened when you attacked them without cause. And more importantly, they had shown what they did with total victory. They had chosen transformation over extermination, mercy over revenge, and the future over the past. That choice, more than any weapon or tactic, was what made them truly dangerous, because it meant they fought not for conquest, but for principles. And beings who fight for principles are far more dangerous than beings who fight for glory. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5